Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody. So hello once again, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today for today's webinar, Display Targeting Strategies for Direct Response. My name is Emel Mutlu, and I'm actually a marketing manager here at Google working on the Google Display Network, and I'll be your host for today's WebEx. And today we actually have some really great content to share with you all, and we'll take a look at the agenda for that in just a second. But before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items. We will provide a copy of this presentation to everybody who's attending today, and we'll get that to you as a follow-up email following the webinar. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, you can please go ahead and submit them at any time during the webinar to the host through your chat window. And we're going to be collecting all those questions and answering them at the end of the presentation. We will also have a short feedback survey at the end of the presentation, so please do provide your feedback through that survey because we really look to that for your input to improve future webinars like this. And I also wanted to go ahead and highlight that you can actually follow us on Twitter today to sort of join the conversation. Our handle is Google Display, one word. Also, if you'll be tweeting yourself during the webinar, you can go ahead and use the hashtag GDN. You can also send us your questions and engage with us on our Twitter page at Google Display. So I'm joined today by David Montes and Laura Bierbauer. David is a product manager, and he works on the Google Display Network on developing a lot of the key tools and features that we'll be covering today. Laura is a solution strategist on the Google Display Network. She works with Fortune 100 advertisers, and she develops GDN campaign strategy and optimizes sophisticated display campaigns for them. And now to the agenda. So we'll start today with David, who's going to give us a quick overview of the display landscape and the opportunity for direct response advertising. And then Laura will take us through the many options that you all have to target your audience with display advertising. She'll give you a framework that you can use to navigate those many choices. And we'll always sort of as a frame of reference keep in mind your goal of maximizing conversions as efficiently as possible as we walk you through that. She'll cover helpful tools, and we'll call those killer features throughout the webinar, and she'll also share strategies from the field that she's learned over the years. We will then cover Q&A at the end based on the questions that you submit to us throughout the webinar. And at the end of the webinar, our goal is that you really walk away with a thorough understanding of the targeting tools that are available for you for direct response on the Google Display Network. And you will also understand how to navigate and apply all of them when you have, really limited time and resources to get the most out of your budget. So with that, let's dive right in. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to David.
Thanks, Emel, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Before we dive in, I thought it'd be cool to start with a quick trivia question. You can go ahead and type your answer into the WebEx chat box once you think you know, and no Googling your answer. So when was the first browser cookie introduced? Today we're going to be talking a lot about targeting and performance. And as I think everyone knows, cookies are a big part of that. So when was the first browser cookie introduced? Again, you can type your answer right into the WebEx chat box. It looks like we've got some answers coming in. Sweet. All right, everyone's in the mid-90s range. So let's go ahead and answer that. There's a couple right ones in there. 1994 was actually when the first browser cookie was introduced. And it was actually via Mosaic. And this probably comes as no surprise to everyone on the call today, but pretty much since the time that first browser cookie was introduced, direct marketers were finding the same goal. Really, how do you find the most conversions at the best price from your digital marketing? Whether it's a simple conversion event you're measuring or a complex cross-channel custom attribution model, the objective really is the same. In fact, studies show us that for more than 80% of top marketers, conversions are the leading gauge of success for the digital marketing campaign. And increasingly, display is working really well to meet that goal. It may be that display works for DR for a lot of different ways, but we kind of look at it as boiling down to two main problems to solve. First is finding the right audience. These are exactly the people that you want to show. And then finally, once you find them, putting the right message in front of them. When this happens, this is what we call the magic moment. This is a one-to-one connection with your users who ultimately drive your conversions. Now, defining the right audience is a pretty broad term, but whether you're looking for broad reach or when granular in-market segmentation, however you want to define it, the ability to hone in on just the right audience is critical. So today's webinar is really focused on the left side of this equation, reaching your audience in the most direct, efficient, and scalable way, driving more magic moments. Now, as many of you know, reaching your audience can be a bit of a balancing act. We're always trying to make two things happen in balance. On the one hand, we want conversions at the lowest possible cost. On the other, we want as many conversions as possible. Even the most cost-efficient conversions don't go very far if we aren't getting enough of them. And conversely, increasing the volume of non-profitable conversions doesn't really mean much. At the end of the day, performance marketing must balance cost and conversion volume to maximize our return on investment. So the magic moment we're talking about has always been so much easier to achieve in search, the holy grail of direct response advertising. When your audience is telling you exactly what they're looking for, that is the magic moment. But thanks to many advances in display, like the availability of more targeting data, performance advertisers are really falling back in love with display. Display is becoming a more and more important part of the marketing mix, and really, it's the next big driver of performance. At a high level, it's hard to ignore the growth of the entire category. I mean, just look at this graph in front of you. There's never been a more exciting time to be in display advertising. In fact, recently, eMarketer released numbers that show display is actually growing more quickly than search. And at Google, we're seeing more of our clients incorporating display across their entire marketing mix. As an example, in the last year, we've seen that 99% of our top 1,000 advertisers have done display with Google. Of them, 75% have increased their budget. So we know that marketers are spending more, but what's causing this? Of course, newly emerging formats like video and premium-rich media are making a strong contribution, but studies are showing that a lot of what's also fueling this is the targeting technologies that are helping advertisers reach that right audience in smarter ways that drive better performance. In fact, marketers are saying the biggest driver in increased display budgets for them is the availability of these better targeting technologies. According to this recent study, marketers who increased their display budget said that the leading reason, at a whopping 53%, was the availability of more targeting options. So the category is growing, and new targeting technologies are a key driver in that growth. But are advertisers actually getting the performance they're looking for? At Google, they absolutely are. Display is performing for advertisers like never before. I wanted to call out a few examples of advertisers who recently featured in our Watch This Space ad campaign. You can see the incredible performance that they're getting from display. For them, displays actually become a core way to grow their business. And you can see the metrics. Display advertising is an essential part of their performance advertising. And these guys are a small sample of what I mentioned earlier about the increased adoption by advertisers across the board. As we mentioned, of our top advertisers doing display with us, 75% of them have increased their budgets in the last year alone. The next big question today is, how do you make results like this happen? Today you have so many targeting options. They help us perform better, but where do you start? And once you get started and you're seeing the types of results that you want, where do you go from there? Today we'll focus on these questions for the rest of the presentation, so I'll turn it over to Laura to help guide us through this.
Thanks, David. Now, before we start, I want to cover a very basic but really fundamental point. And really, this is one that's often neglected by advertisers, but it's critical to success for direct response campaigns. In my experience, before you can effectively apply the right targeting strategy, you must understand what's driving performance. Conversion tracking is essential for this. If you don't track conversions, you don't just lose out on measurement. It unlocks some of the most powerful tools on the Google Display Network, like auto-optimization, view-through conversions, and remarketing. And also access to tools like the recent feature we rolled out, multi-channel funnels. Some of you might be familiar with it. It's a beta to help you understand which marketing channels are driving conversions for your campaigns, like search and display, for example. The point is, without conversion tracking, you're always doing display at the most basic level. The vast majority of the features we're going to talk about today are powered by conversion tracking. For that reason, each time we encounter one of these features, we'll denote it with this measurement icon in the upper right-hand corner. All right, so having covered that important point, let's get back to making sense of all the targeting options on the GDN. Building your target audience is typically done using a combination of a number of different targeting options. These include audience targeting, or behavioral targeting, as it's also known in the industry. Contextual targeting, which is about targeting users based on the content of the page they visit. Demographic targeting, targeting by page categories or topics, which is similar to contextual targeting. Run of site, and remarketing. Then there are also automated optimization solutions, which we'll cover today because they're another option for advertisers on the Google Display Network. So getting back to our challenge of driving efficiency at scale, where do you start? The reality is each of these targeting types represents a different level of opportunity. How will each perform from a scale and CPA perspective? How do you grow your conversion volume in a way that's most efficient? So let's look at a systematic approach for applying targeting in your campaigns to drive the best performance. To begin, let's map all your targeting options on a scale of CPA and conversion rate. The x-axis at the bottom is cost per acquisition, or CPA. You have a favorable CPA on the left side of the axis, and as you move towards the right, the cost per conversion increases. Moving up, the y-axis is the conversion rate. You have a really strong conversion rate at the bottom of the y-axis and a lower, less favorable conversion rate as you move towards the top. Now what we've done is taken each of the targeting types that we've seen works really well for direct response advertisers, and we've mapped it on this scale. The size of the bubbles reflects the conversion volume that you can expect from each targeting type. So we can now easily see the expected conversion rate, CPA, and volume of conversions for each targeting type relative to all the other targeting types. For example, remarketing is going to have a really high conversion rate and a relatively low CPA, but it's going to be delivering a modest amount of conversion volume. On the other hand, something as broad as targeting by topics all the way up at the right-hand corner, formerly known as category targeting, that's going to have a higher CPA and a much lower conversion rate. But the volume of conversions you can get with topics is a lot larger, so it's something you should look at when you're looking to scale. I've seen that of all the different targeting types available in the GDN, and there are a lot of them, these are the targeting types that are the most effective for direct response advertisers. It just depends on the right strategy and how much scale you need. Quick note, this is based on what we've seen typically happen, but it's definitely not going to apply for every single advertiser or campaign. For example, if you're an advertiser who measures user conversions, this scale will probably look slightly different for you. The first thing you should think about when you're taking your campaign beyond search is to get the most cost-efficient conversions you can find. So look to the bottom of the marketing funnel. This is where you start with remarketing to re-engage your current audience. With remarketing, you're ultimately limited by the size of your cookie pool. It's a great performer in terms of conversion rate and CPA, but how do you scale that? I've seen that contextual targeting is the next best way to scale beyond those really efficient conversions you were getting from remarketing. Many of you will know that the Google Display Network started with contextual targeting, and because the technology behind how we do it has evolved so much over the years, we see it working really well for direct response advertisers. But even with contextual targeting, you're going to reach a limit where you've built out keyword lists and you really need to find a way to scale further. That's when you turn to Display Campaign Optimizer, interest categories, run of site, and topics targeting to get even broader reach and volume. So this shows how a direct response advertiser might effectively scale where they find conversions while they still maintain that solid base of efficiency. The key is understanding what the next step will be and how it will perform relative to the other options you're using. Keep in mind that with each step, you'll get additional conversions, but at a different CPA. Let's start with remarketing. As we all know, remarketing is advertising to people who previously left your website without converting. It works because you're reaching a qualified audience who already visited your site, and you're re-engaging them to get them to come back and convert. It makes sense because the easiest way to find conversions is to go after users who have already demonstrated an interest in your product or brand. Remarketing is likely to result in the highest conversion rate and the lowest CPAs for that exact reason. Expect remarketing to drive the most similar performance to what you're seeing on your search campaigns. Remarketing is important because the vast majority of people who visit your website actually leave without having done what you want them to do. A recent study showed that 96% of people who visit a website leave without converting. Similarly, 70% of shoppers abandon their shopping cart without completing their transaction. These stats show that remarketing is a really valuable way to reach interested customers because it reminds them of their interest in your product and it helps bring them back to close the loop. Just a quick reminder, to enable remarketing, you need to place a small snippet of code on your web pages. And also, a quick killer feature that you should know about. You can actually turn a conversion tracking tag into a remarketing tag through the AdWords interface. No additional retagging needed. Once you've done that, you can collect cookie users as well as count conversions through that single tag. So why would you want to do remarketing with the GDN? Imagine that you have a remarketing list. Chances are we can reach 84% of users on that list. That's the reach we achieve for the typical remarketing list on the GDN. Secondly, we can reach those users immediately after they leave your site. Most other platforms that do remarketing take a minimum of about 6 hours before you can serve ads to users who left your site. But our internal data shows that remarketing converts the best when you reach users in the initial hours after they've left your site. Ad effectiveness really quickly drops off after that. So on GDN, we have instantaneous cookie addition to remarketing lists. The minute a user lands on your page, their cookie is added to your remarketing list. And the next page they visit on the GDN, no matter how quickly, we can serve your ad to them right then. Reaching more people is important, but how many times are you reaching them? On the GDN, we serve hundreds of billions of impressions to over 500 million internet users each month. And just a little tidbit on that, advertisers love remarketing, but scale is their biggest challenge. All of these things really help advertisers achieve both scale and efficiency with remarketing. But not all remarketing is going to be equally effective. It really depends on how deeply a user engages on your site. The deeper they get on your site, the more interest they've shown and the more effective it is to remarket to them. So be sure to tag all your pages and set up a list strategy with what you know about that user. Some examples of list strategies are shopping cart page, search landing page, product pages, and homepage lists, each with converted users removed. Remember, any site on your page that you can remarket off of, you should definitely tag. When you set up these different remarketing lists, this is what it might look like on our original scale. Setting up different remarketing lists will help you bid more aggressively for more effective strategies, and vice versa, that will result in more efficient CPAs. So your abandoned shopping cart remarketing list is going to be the most efficient, but it's also going to deliver the lowest relative volume since those users went the furthest into your site. There are fewer of them. But those users are more valuable, and you actually might want to bid higher for them. Next, your product page remarketing list will also be quite efficient since you know exactly what products they're interested in. Your search landing page lists are likely to deliver the next best performance since somebody has searched on your product or brand and clicked on your search ad. You'll get a larger volume from your homepage remarketing list since more users visit your homepage. But you have less info about those users since they haven't expressed the same level of interest, and they won't convert as well as the other lists. All this underlines the importance of tagging all your pages. Let's take a quick look at a case study of Lenovo. So their goal was to drive online sales of Lenovo computers within a desired ROI. Their approach was they tagged product pages and all high-traffic pages, and they created separate lists for general visitors, abandoned shopping cart, and purchasers. Then they served ads that were tailored to these groups featuring specific products and promotions. They adjusted bids, ads, and lists for continued optimization. The results were really good. Remarketing drove 20% of campaign total orders. Their CPCs for remarketing ads were 14% lower than campaign CPCs, and they reduced the expense to revenue ratio by 14%. I worked a lot with advertisers who serve the same ad from contextual campaigns in their remarketing campaigns, and it really limits their performance. The more specific the ad to the page that the user visited, the better your performance will be. Quick tip, add a converted users list as a negative audience to every GDN campaign that you run to make sure that you're not wasting any impressions. eTrailer actually did this. Their goal was to increase online traffic and conversion rates efficiently. And their approach was they tagged pages relating to each major product and created custom creatives for each. And then they excluded people who had already made a purchase. The results? CTR of remarketing was 2 times that of the rest of their display campaigns. They doubled their view-through conversions, and they also increased direct traffic by 25%. So with remarketing, you're always limited by the size of your user list. You can only actually target users that have come to your site. And at some point, you're going to need to expand to reach a new audience who hasn't visited your site. But first, make sure that you take steps to really maximize the volume that you're getting from remarketing, since we know it's the most efficient of all the targeting types. The most obvious thing to do is to look at your campaign budget. Are you maximizing it? If you're spending your full budget every day, you can increase your budget to increase your share of users. Also, look at your bids. Are they helping you be competitive to win the auctions to get your ad in front of your users? They should be. Finally, take a look at the duration of your remarketing cookie. You should set it to match your sales cycle to ensure you're only targeting users who are most likely to be in the consideration set. And set your converted users list to a longer membership duration so you don't waste impressions on them. Also, take a look at your other campaign settings to make sure that they aren't limiting the number of cookied users that you're reaching. All of these things are going to help you grow your remarketing list even further. Once you're ready to start scaling your campaign even more to get greater volume, think first about contextual targeting. For many campaigns, contextual targeting is the next best option because it means showing a user an ad that's related to the type of content that they're viewing. Nobody does contextual like Google does. We don't just categorize sites into broad vertical or sub-vertical buckets. Similar to how our search algorithms crawl web pages and bring back relevant results to users, our contextual engine is a powerful algorithm that continually scans every single web page on every single website in the Google Display Network. It understands what each page is about, and it does this through semantic technology that looks at many factors like keywords, frequency of words, font sizes, word placement, and linguistics. Since we do contextual targeting at the page level and not the site level, we can serve users very precisely targeted ads and do it in near real time. In my experience, contextual targeting drives the best results for advertisers who invest in building out tightly themed specific ad groups in a smart way. You want to tier your strategy so that you're first implementing what is most likely to deliver the best results. So start with keywords that are directly related to your brand. Then expand to keywords that are directly related to your products and services. And finally, expand further to related keywords that aren't necessarily about your brand or product, but will still be relevant. Examples are complementary products, activities related to the topic. The key is to think about your audience and where they are online. Definitely use negatives to refine and tighten your ad groups. Let's look at a quick case study from 7th Generation. Their goal was to increase conversions, which are coupon downloads and loyalty program signups, and they also wanted a lower CPA. So they created contextual targeting campaigns on the GDN to broaden their reach. At first, they used keywords associated with their products like household cleaners, kitchen cleaners, and bath cleaners. They didn't get the volume of conversions that they were looking for, so they began to expand by using broader keywords related to environmentally responsible lifestyles and green living sites, such as a blog about organic baby clothes. They ended up increasing their conversions by 102%, and they decreased CPA by 28%. So to summarize, as you expand beyond brand and product terms, you'll see less return on those additional ad groups, but you'll also get additional conversions. The CPA is just not going to be as competitive. When you see that the additional conversions aren't profitable anymore, that's when you want to stop expanding ad groups. Earlier we talked about the importance of tightly themed keyword lists. It can be cumbersome and really time-consuming to create those. So that's why we launched a contextual targeting tool. It's the perfect way to efficiently build a contextual campaign. It automatically builds tightly themed ad groups based on your brand, products, or services. And you can actually find this tool within the AdWords interface. Suggested bids are also provided to ensure you're competitive in the auction and that you get the exposure and volume that you need. You should look through and pick the ad groups that make sense and download them to implement your campaign. Also, I'd recommend looking at the keywords to make sure that they make sense and edit them if they don't. At some point, you're going to reach a limit with contextual targeting where you've built out all the relevant ad groups. Now is when you evaluate whether your budget and bids are set up to give you maximum volume. I want to highlight another killer feature here, impression share data. Impression share tells you, out of all the auctions that are contextually relevant to your ad group, what percentage of those auctions are you actually winning? For example, if you participate in 6 auctions and you only win 3 of them, then your impression share is about 50%. Oops, sorry. Impression share can be limited by either your budget or your bid. If you're capping out on budget every day, you should increase your budget to increase your impression share. And if you aren't capping out, it's most likely your bids that are limiting your impression share. I would say directionally that less than 30% is a low impression share, and you want to optimize to increase that. And if your impression share is 70% over, that's pretty strong. A quick tip from the field, to best optimize contextual targeting, you need to look at performance at the URL level. Each subdomain of a site may perform differently, and looking at the URL level can help you narrow down where you're performing well and what you should adjust bids for, or exclude due to poor performance. Generally, I suggest doing this about once a week, and consider excluding a placement if it spent twice the CPA over 2 weeks but hasn't converted. If you don't want to manually optimize your bids, check to see if you can use Conversion Optimizer. Your campaign needs 15 conversions within 30 days to be eligible. Conversion Optimizer will save you so much time and effort in optimizing your campaign because it automatically bids for you based on a CPA goal that you set. For example, what if users from specific geographies using certain browsers have a higher likelihood of converting on your website at 2 p.m. in the afternoon? You can't measure, track, and optimize nuances like this in real time manually. Now imagine millions of users visiting various sites, and now imagine the complexity. Conversion Optimizer will do all the heavy lifting for you. It takes into account user and site signals, the user's location, browser, operating system, and language setting, the site's page content, and degree of match between the ad and the content. Bottom line, it's one of the most powerful automatic bid management tools out there. On average, using Conversion Optimizer increases conversions by 21%, while decreasing CPA by 14%. A lot of advertisers are hesitant to test Conversion Optimizer because they're not sure it's going to work for them and for their campaign. An alternative is that you can try Enhanced CPC. It's like a light version of Conversion Optimizer. Testing out Enhanced CPC is a good way to see if automated bid management is right for you. If Enhanced CPC works, it's more likely that Conversion Optimizer is going to work for you because they're built on the same technology. When you turn Enhanced CPC on, it only changes your bid on 50% of auctions, and it self-monitors. If it's improving your performance, it can modify bids on up to 85% of your auctions. You can also monitor the performance on auctions that it modifies and compare that to the control auctions within AdWords. If Enhanced CPC sees that it's actually not improving performance on your campaigns, it will modify fewer and fewer auctions until it eventually just turns itself off. Before we dive into scaling beyond contextual targeting, remember every targeting option you use beyond remarketing is going to fuel your core remarketing campaign. So your contextual targeting will not just deliver incremental conversions, but the additional users it sends to your website who don't convert are more users that get added to your remarketing list. So remember, and we'll touch on this with every targeting type we talk about, any targeting option you use beyond remarketing will in turn grow your remarketing list. What does that mean for you? Make sure that the pages where you're sending users are tagged so that you're capturing the traffic that you drive to your site. So you'll eventually reach a point where you fully maximize the contextual themes that make sense for your brand, product, and audience. And it's time to think about the next step to scale performance. Display Campaign Optimizer is going to make sense for some of you as the next step beyond contextual targeting. DCO, while not a different targeting type, is a fully automated solution that you implement as a separate campaign, and it runs in addition to the other campaigns that you're running. It automatically targets and bids for your ads on the GDN based on your historical performance. DCO isn't available to all advertisers currently. Only those who have an account manager and meet certain eligibility requirements can test it, but we're working right now on a solution for everyone. The way DCO works is you provide your ads, your CPA goal, and your daily budget, and the Display Campaign Optimizer automatically goes to work. First, it targets sites contextually relevant to pages on the GDN. Targets your ad to sites contextually relevant on pages on the GDN based on signals from your website. In the background, it continually analyzes performance and how that's impacted by page, bid, website, and more. In fact, it looks at thousands of combinations of these factors. DCO uses that information to eliminate pages that aren't working, and it finds and targets additional pages based on what's working well. All of this results in more conversions at your target CPA. DCO works really well for a lot of our advertisers, but it's definitely not for everyone. You need 30 GDN conversions in your account every day for 30 days to qualify, and you need to be comfortable with a hands-off approach. Talk to your account manager. If you're not eligible, Conversion Optimizer and Enhanced CPC are both good alternatives. Zoosk is an advertiser who did test DCO. They wanted to increase free signups and convert those into paying subscribers. So they opted into the GDN to expand reach and started using DCO to maximize their conversion volume. They saw a 15% increase in ROI and major time savings. They managed a lot of international campaigns, and DCO helped save manual optimization time. They spent 30% of their budget on the GDN, but DCO actually drives the vast majority of conversions for them. At this point, you've reached people who have expressed interest in your brand, you've reached them through remarketing, and you've expanded to reach people who are interested in your products or brands in the exact moment they're reading about them. And if you qualify, you've used DCO to expand beyond KCT to find new contextual pages that work well. One thing we haven't touched on is something marketers are increasingly turning to, and that's audience targeting. If you're selling cameras and a user has browsed away from the site where they were reading about cameras, how do you reach them in other places on the web? Interest categories make it possible to reach users based on what pages they visited and what interest they've demonstrated. Audience targeting is fundamentally different from contextual targeting because it helps you reach those users who are likely to be interested in cameras and reach them across the web. It's based on things like the interest, demographics, or website visitation associated with your target audience. We're seeing tremendous growth in audience targeting right now. Advertiser surveys show adoption of audience buying is as high as 85%, and almost half of surveyed advertisers said they would use audience targeting for most of their online spend. On the GDN, we call this offering interest category targeting. It's our version of behavioral targeting. More than a year ago, we started testing interest categories on the GDN, and about a month ago, we launched it to all AdWords advertisers globally. Here's how it works. We look at types of pages that users visit, and then we associate their browser with relevant interest categories. You can use these categories to show ads to the people most likely to purchase your products and services. So if you can remember 3 things about audience targeting with Google, remember, it's big. You can pick from over 1,000 interest categories, and those interest categories reach over 500 million internet users worldwide each day. To put that in perspective, other behavioral targeting partners reach between 200 million and 500 million users each month. We reach over 1 billion users in 1 month. We also put our contextual algorithms to work to understand, at the page level, what users are reading about so that we can infer their interests. The more frequently they visit pages, and the more recently, all that's taken into account to infer their interests. Finally, as with any targeting option you choose, you pay only for clicks or impressions at auction prices with interest category targeting. We don't charge any additional cost for the audience data. Remember that other behavioral targeting networks and platforms charge extra for the audience data. So So how do you figure out which interest categories to target? Let's walk through this because I've seen that picking the right categories is really the foundation of performance with this targeting. The first place to start is to target interests that are directly related to your products or services. For the direct response advertisers that I've worked with, a good strategy is to build up conversion volume on interest categories and then use Conversion Optimizer to automate performance. Shoot-Dazzle tested interest categories. They wanted to generate leads amongst targeted websites that ultimately became sales while meeting their CPA goals. So they used interest categories along with contextual targeting, and then they layered on Conversion Optimizer. Conversion Optimizer actually increased conversion volume by 400% within 4 days. Shoot-Dazzle increased daily spend by 6 times within a few weeks of starting interest categories because the performance was so strong, and it led to really high sale quality, and their CPA remained steady. Once you're running on interest categories that are related to your products, you should think about expanding to interest categories that already might be performing well. Some of the most sophisticated advertisers are using this strategy to scale their audience targeting in a way that makes sense. The killer feature that they're using is the audience composition report. If you have existing converted users remarketing lists, you can actually see what interests your converted users fall into, and you can target those interests. Note that this report is only currently available for advertisers working with an account team. Interest category targeting, like any of the other targeting options we spoke about today, drives new users to your website, further fueling and growing your remarketing list and really boosting the impact of your remarketing campaigns. So there's a lot of interplay here between the different targeting types. And it makes sense because think about it. Any targeting type or channel that drives traffic to your website is new traffic that you can remarket to. Later on, we'll talk about how you can measure this with new tools that we're rolling out. So up to now, we talked about starting with remarketing, expanding to contextual, auto-optimization, and interest category marketing. As we've moved up the sequence of targeting options, we've also talked about how, as we broaden our reach with the next option, we get more conversion volume, but at CPAs that might be slightly higher. So it's the trade-off between efficiency and scale. We have 2 more options to consider when it comes to broadening your reach even further. Run a Site is hand-picking websites you want to target, and Topics targeting is targeting all pages on the GDN that are dynamically categorized into specific topics or subtopics. These 2 options are not as contextually relevant or specific to an audience, but they're good options when you've tried all the different targeting types we talked about so far in the webinar. They're going to deliver additional conversions, and if applied correctly, that additional conversion volume can be cost-effective. When you're picking the sites and placements for run-of-site targeting, pick sites that have a high composition of the audience that you're looking for. Free tools like Ad Planner can really help you do that. When targeting topics, target those that are closely related to your business or the contextual themes that you're targeting in other campaigns. Definitely use CPC bids, and for topics, start with bids on the lower end of the spectrum since topics are so broad. I would watch performance to make sure that you're bidding correctly and showing on relevant placements. We've walked through all the targeting options that are best for direct response advertising and how you make sense of all of them to drive performance and efficiency at scale. We want to leave you with a note. This is not the magic formula that will work for every single advertiser or campaign. This is just what we've seen works best in most cases for direct response advertisers. If you've got an upcoming campaign that you're launching or you're using display for the first time, we hope this helps to guide you in terms of how you might start and progress through all the options. There are a couple of things to consider with your creative to make sure that you're maximizing your targeting strategy. Try all ad formats. This means both text and display. 25% of sites in the GDN don't accept display ads at all. So if you're excluding text ads from your campaigns, you're definitely sacrificing volume. And when it comes to display, the more ad sizes you use, the more options you'll be eligible to participate in. Not every publisher accepts every ad size on their website, so you want to make sure that you're covering as much as possible. And finally, a really important word on measurement. The tendency in the market is to measure CPA to determine what is and what isn't working. We find that measuring net profit, akin to ROI, is a more meaningful metric to use. Let's walk through why. Let's say the conversion value or sale price of an item is $30. The cost of that product to you is $15, and you're targeting to a CPA of $9. Let's also say that you're currently using the following targeting types, and they're all delivering the listed conversion volume. All targeting types are below your CPA goal, except interest categories, which has a CPA higher than your $9 goal. If you measure each of these campaigns separately based on CPA, you'll be inclined to exclude the interest categories campaign. But instead, let's look at your net profits in both cases to determine if you really should. To calculate net profit, we'll look at your total revenue based on all the conversions you're getting and the sale price of your product. We'll then subtract your advertising and product costs. This is how much profit you're making. If you exclude interest categories, your net profit based on this equation comes to $780. What happens if you include interest category targeting? Your net profit actually increases. So even though your CPA is higher, those additional 35 conversions are profitable for you. The other thing to consider is that by excluding interest categories, because it might also be fueling other campaigns, like your remarketing campaign, you may lose additional conversions there, bringing your net profit even lower in the scenario where you exclude this targeting type. So what's the lesson? Definitely measure holistically across all your targeting types, and when you're doing that, look at meaningful metrics beyond just CPA, such as net profit. To help tie together the disparate measurement across targeting types, we launched a beta, multi-channel funnels. Multi-channel funnels shows which marketing channels, like search or display, customers interacted with before converting. For display specifically, it can actually break it down to the exact campaign and ad group levels so that you get a sense of which campaigns and ad groups touched users before they converted. This really gives you a view into more holistic performance across targeting types that we're talking about. Talk to your account manager if you're interested in that beta. We're looking to release it to everyone soon. So you heard a lot from us today about all the targeting options available to you on the GDN. But if there were just 3 things to remember and take away from today's webinar, I wanted to leave you with those key things. First, remember the importance of tagging your website for conversion tracking and remarketing. These 2 little tags not only help you measure better, but unlock really powerful tools on the GDN. Secondly, in light of all the targeting strategies we covered today, evaluate your targeting mix. Are there areas that you can expand to for more volume, or is there low-hanging fruit that you need to implement? Finally, try Conversion Optimizer. It works with all targeting types and takes a lot of the manual effort needed to make display optimization off your plate. Thanks, and now I'll hand it back to Lynelle.
Thank you so much, Laura and David. Before we start closing and sort of getting into Q&A, I actually wanted to mention I got a lot of questions that were being typed in about whether we're going to have sort of a summary or any collateral that summarizes a lot of the targeting options that we talked about today. So along with all the materials that we'll be distributing to you in the follow-up email after the webinar, one of those pieces is actually a summary of all the targeting options that we talked about today, along with the framework that we kind of walked through. So that's definitely going to be available. There's also some questions about how do we implement a lot of the sort of features and the killer features and tools that we talked about today. So given that, we're going to be providing you with the presentation as a follow-up along with that collateral that I mentioned. So you'll have a list of everything that we talked about. And for those of you who have an account manager and are working with a team at Google, you can actually get their help in terms of implementation. For everybody else, we actually have very detailed information on all of these features in our AdWords Help Center. So you can actually read up more about what they are, how to implement, and how they might work for you. So we've come to the end of the presentation today, and we hope that you guys have a new perspective on what's possible with all of these different targeting options for your direct response objective. And a lot of the tools that we talked about that are in your toolbox to really make it work for your campaigns. And we're going to be using the remaining time to answer a lot of the questions that we got from you. If you do happen to sign off, please remember to take our survey. As I mentioned earlier, they are really important for us to improve our future webinars. So why don't we kick off with the Q&A next, and we have about 10 minutes or so to go through that. So one of the first questions that actually came up was, this is great, and display seems to be performing for a lot of advertisers, but what can be said about sort of how to think about the display versus search mix? David, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Thanks, Mel. So at Google, I think we have the great advantage of performing really well in both search and display. We're developing some pretty awesome products in both areas. And Laura mentioned in kind of the beginning, we have this really new feature we rolled out called multi-channel funnels. Multi-channel funnels essentially allows you in reports to begin seeing how search and display work together. I talk a lot about this kind of fusion effect from doing search and display. A lot of the different strategies we saw on display help feed users back into your remarketing segment. Well, search does the exact same thing. When you look across an entire kind of direct response user consideration funnel, the two work very complementary, and what we're starting to see is kind of a 1 + 1 = 3 when you use both together. So when you have follow-up on multi-channel funnels, I think that'll start to actually show you some of the benefit of running both search and display together.
Yeah. Great. Another question we got was about implementing remarketing. We actually got a lot of questions about remarketing. So one of the first ones was, can you please review the tag implementation of remarketing again?
Sure, I'll take that one. So to implement remarketing tags, it's actually very similar to how you implement conversion tags. You can go into your AdWords account and generate a remarketing tag and just place that on your site. And if you want detailed instructions on exactly how to do that, we have all of that in the Help Center. The important thing to remember when you are implementing these remarketing tags is to think about your list strategy. So where are you going to place those tags? Definitely place it on a converted users page. And then you might want to place it on the home page, your search landing page, product pages, and the page of your shopping cart. So you could target abandoned shopping cart users.
And one of the benefits that we actually talked about earlier of kind of tagging all these pages is you can start showing different users, different ads based on, which list of your remarketing lists they're in. Right, Laura? So you can actually send them a different ad if they came to a specific product page versus if they just came to your homepage and you don't really have that information about what products they're interested in.
Definitely. We've actually seen that the more specific the ad is to the point in your site that the user reached, the better your click-through rate and the better your conversion rate.
Can you say something about the types of ads that should be used with remarketing? We got a few questions about that in terms of just text ads versus display. Or can you say anything about the creative itself that you've seen from experience?
I'll take that one. As Laura mentioned earlier, we recommend that on any type of strategy, including remarketing, we run every type of creative possible, so text and display, because as you can imagine, different creative formats perform better on different sites across the GDN. But as some on the phone may know, I actually am the product director for Dynamic Ads, and I come from Terrasense, a dynamic ad vendor acquired by Google almost 2 years ago. And we're doing a lot of work to help make creative more relevant. That's really our objective here, is to make creative content and the formats as relevant as possible to users. And in that area, there's a lot of developments that I think everyone on the phone will be excited to see coming out in the next few months to help drive more relevant ads, particularly for direct response customers like yourself.
Great. And we got a question about sort of the difference between topics and a run of site. Meaning it seems counterintuitive that topics targeting contextual by topic would be bigger than run of site. Can you elaborate on why that is with Google?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that one. So I can see how that might seem counterintuitive, but the idea is that when you're doing run of site, you're actually picking particular sites and then targeting them. But with topics, you're actually targeting one topic. Within that topic is bundled every single page in our network that is related to that topic or subtopic. So we're looking at the hundreds of thousands of sites in our network, dynamically categorizing every page within each site into topics. So that's why it ends up being a much broader scale than what you would get if you picked specific placements.
Great. Another question we got was about excluding by demographics, the IP address, country, etc. So for those specific options, are those available on the GDN today?
So you're account manager can probably speak to some of this in more detail than I'll give from a product perspective, but the great thing about AdWords, both display and search, is the ability to obviously configure these different targeting strategies, but to continue to maintain all of your kind of restrictions within. So you can block specific placements. There's a lot of optimization that comes from that. You can also negatively target converted users on your converted list, as well as add additional targets like country targeting and kind of general geo-targeting, et cetera.
Right, and from what I know, IP address exclusion is not available today, and I don't believe that demographics is either. But what we can do is actually look into a very detailed answer on this one and include that in the written Q&A that we will include as part of the material so that you can actually get a more thorough answer from us on each of these. So another question is about, sort of the importance of using negative keywords in contextually targeted campaigns using keywords. Laura, should you theme those negative keywords together, or, can they be disparate?
So actually, you don't really need to theme negative keywords. You can just put in single negative keywords into an ad group, and that will work fine. Of course, the more negative keywords you put around a certain theme, the stronger the system is going to recognize that as a negative theme. So that's how I kind of think about how you're doing your negative keywords. It doesn't have to be a theme, but the more you put in around a certain topic, the stronger those negative keywords will act together.
Great. We got a couple of questions about sort of the inventory and the publishers that are part of the Google Display Network. One of them was, how many publishers join the Google Display Network, either by day, month, or year? Is that data available? And a related one was actually, I think people are just looking for ways to keep on top of what are new placements that are available in the GDN. So are there ways of doing that today?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say the best way to keep on top of what inventory is in the GDN is through Ad Planner, which is a free tool that you can access. Ad Planner actually looks at the entire internet, so it's all sites within the internet, not just sites that are in the GDN, but you can use filters to specify that you want to look specifically at GDN inventory. And as to how many publishers are coming into the GDN, I don't believe we have any specific numbers on that because it's really dynamic and changing constantly. I think the key thing to remember is that the GDN is made up not only of publishers from AdSense, but also from the Ad Exchange publishers. So we're constantly getting in new AdX publishers coming in through the exchange, as well as new publishers coming in from AdSense.
Okay, and we have, David, this looks like a good one for you since you work on Terrascent. Can you speak a little bit about the planned integration of Terrascent into the Google Display Network?
Sure thing. So towards the end of this year, people start seeing kind of flavors of dynamic ads starting to make its way across the display network. I think the exciting thing for our team is that we think of dynamics not just as one type of display format, but really as a fundamental benefit across all creative formats across the network. Really the goal here is creating ads as relevant as possible. Today we have an early beta running that allows our e-commerce remarketing customers to run product-specific ads where a user that visits a specific product page on your site sees those products back in the ad. And you can contact your account manager to find out more information.
Great. Thank you, David. And we have a question here about conversion tracking. Do I have to pass my shopping cart value to Google when implementing conversion tracking?
So I'll take that one actually with a quick answer. I think the great thing is that you certainly can pass shopping cart value, but it's optional. And there's a few additional optional values that you can send in to help enhance your reporting and what we're able to do with your campaign. But an important thing to note is that Google doesn't collect any personally identifiable information on individual users. We actually require you to not pass any type of PII data across.
Great, thank you. And we have an interesting question here that might be good for you, Laura. Any thoughts on using keyword contextual targeting to run on competing keywords? In other words, keywords relating to competing brands.
That's actually a really great question. We've just seen from the presentation, we just know from campaigns that we've run that brand terms work very well with contextual targeting on the GDN. And we've actually seen that using competitor terms in ad groups, competitor brand terms, also works well. So it's definitely a strategy you can use to slightly expand beyond the brand terms that you're targeting.
Great. And I think we're right about at time right now, so we're going to wrap up. And we actually had a lot more questions that we got from everybody, and what we're going to do is collect all of them and create an FAQ document where we thoroughly address each one, and we'll include that in the materials that we follow up with. So thank you, everybody, for attending today. As you're leaving, please don't forget to take the survey and let us know what you thought today. Share your feedback so that we can improve future webinars. We hope that you all have a great rest of your day.